Hi, and welcome to the final part of my video tutorial on how to rotoscope in Mocha Pro for creating a depth map for a 2D to 3D conversion of your favorite movie or video. One thing that I did forget to mention in the previous one was these two programs consume an awful lot of resources, and if you have too little of RAM, you're going to wind up having serious issues, major lockups. If you're running SSDs and you're having to disable the paging file, be sure that you have plenty of RAM, because I have a total of 6 gigs and it's still barely enough. Every now and then, whenever I'm working on a extra long scene, well, not even really even an extra long scene, the RAM usage goes way up, and usually whenever I'm running all these programs at once, especially when I start to use them, this escalates even higher, and once you run out of memory, the system will lock up. There's a chance that it will lock up during this tutorial. So let me go ahead and get started so I can get this thing going. I'm gonna bring up Mocha Pro. I've already loaded the project that we're working on, and from the previous tutorial I showed you that to keep your layer order, and that because the camera view is difficult to depict or determine which object was closer than the other object, especially right here on the guy's face. I've already done a test map and come to find out that the way how I had told you was, it looked okay, but it didn't look right. So I wound up changing it to where the nose was closest to the camera. Then I put the left and the right wing of the helmet next in the layer order, then the helmet, then the face, then the right shoulder, then the body, and of course the background, the walls and background. So now you need to export this to a program for roto painting. Well, in order to do this, all these need to be highlighted. You need to make sure all these shapes are turned on, and you want to make sure that this stuff is highlighted, or not highlighted but lit up. If you sometimes whenever you click on some of these things and they're hidden, because you can actually like take all these things like this, and you can put them into a group. You can group select it, or you can even create a new folder by selecting new group and put different splines together in a group. Like, say, if you got several shapes right here, if you want every single one of these shapes to be in the same tree and take up less space here, you can combine them into a folder. And when they're combined into a folder, if they are not properly highlighted, then just like this down here where you can't change anything, it has to be selected in order to be able to do that. Another thing is that if in the timeline, if say the nose has to stop at a certain point, and that roto shape doesn't go past, like, say, this point right here, this frame in the timeline, if you have this past that, like, say you have it right here, you won't be able to select anything down here. In order to be able to select those roto shapes, you have to be in between the in and out points. So now let me go ahead and show you how to do this. You can either export the tracking data, which we don't need to do that for roto painting, or you can export shape data. This is what you need for roto painting. When you click on this, you get an option menu for the format. There's a few different ones you can use. There's combustion, flame, nuke, roto paint, nuke roto, shake, and mocha shape data for After Effects and for Final Cut. Now I've tried combustion, but I can't figure it out, and I don't really care for After Effects. It's loaded down with way too much junk that I really don't think you need. I wish they would make that program to where you can just load up the stuff that you want instead of having it all there at once. It's just way too confusing. But the extension that we want is the Nuke Roto Paint. So make sure that's selected. And now for the exporting, you can select one individual layer, which what this will do is even though these are all turned on, whichever layer is highlighted is the one that will get exported. Or you can do all the layers, which it doesn't mean if any one of these are turned on or off, it will just take them all anyways. Or if you just want all the visible layers that are turned on right here, you can export them all at once. Now if you have a very long project that you are working on, like for example if you've got rotos for one particular person, you want to just export all those shapes and then come back into the program later after you've finished working in the other program and turn them off, well, if you want, and turn on the other shapes that you need and export them. So now what we're going to do is just copy to the clipboard. Be patient. Sometimes that takes a while. It's not always that fast. And now you want to come over to Nuke. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, now yes, this is a pretty complicated piece of software. It's got a lot of stuff in it. In order to be able to import what you just copied, you can either right click right here and you can go to File. Oops, not in File. It would be under Edit and you would want to go to Paste, or you can hit Control V. I just basically hit Control V. Be patient, and there's your imported information. Well, now you're thinking, well, what next? Well, I want to double click on this, and there's your rotor shapes. Okay, now you want to take this little arrow down here, right click on it and drag it to the viewer, and there you go. Now if you want to come up to here, you can name this node, but I'm not really too worried about that. If you're having trouble viewing this stuff and you don't want to scroll down, you click up here to float these controls, drag the window down, and you got a much better view of this. Now here's something that's very important under the format. You want to make sure that it is not set to the default. There might be a way to change this, but I don't know. You want to make sure that you set it to the correct resolution. This one is 1920 by 1080. Click on that, and now as you see the screen change, that's set correctly. Don't worry about this. It crops black bars automatically. Whenever you output it, it will output it with the black bars. Okay, make sure that your output is set to RGBA. If it's set to anything else, it won't work correctly. It needs to be set to RGBA. This is usually done by default. Okay, now you want to know how to roto paint. I know that all this looks very complicated. The only thing that you need to mess with in this is this right here. Every single one of these needs to be changed. This is where the colors go in. You click on it, be patient, and this pops up. If you don't see these, click on this right here. This will turn this on. Okay, you don't need to worry about these unless you're really nitpicking about the shades. So, since that's the background, you want the background to be black. Okay, now this is where it's going to get a little bit more trickier. You want to either use single color spacing, which is each one of these. That's a single channel up from the other one, of course. But in order to get the best possible depth, you want to use double color spacing. You can even go farther than that if you want. So the back wall needs to be a different color. You just select that, this window stays up, and naturally you want to go for the next color, but on this you do not want to do that because it won't provide as much depth. Even with this, it still doesn't look too depth defying, but that's what we're going to use anyways because you have a limited amount of color space. So pardon me, you want to click on that. See how the background has already been changed? You got your black, and then you got your next shade. It's a little bit lighter. Want to come over to the next one, the right wall. You want to paint that wall a second color space, not the next one, a double color space over, just two over. If you're having trouble because how confusing this can be, you can either count these things or you can use this as a guide. We use this one. It's in between the colored bar and the gray bar. Okay, now you want the rest of the walls to be that color, so just remember middle of these two colors. Select the next one up, come back over to here, click on it, come over to the next wall, click on that, and click on this. See how it's painting it up in the screen? Okay, now you want to go to the body. The body is behind the shoulder, and we just picked this one, so you want to pick up or pick over on the two. Click on that one. Okay, now the right shoulder is seriously close to that body, so you're only wanting to use a single color spacing on this. Okay, since we chose this one earlier, we want to choose the next one over. Okay, now the face, you want to do a double color space on it. So that would be right here in between the red and the gray. Click on that. Click on that one. Okay, now the helmet, single space, because it's right on top of the face. Go over to there. Okay, now this one would be right under the red. Okay, now the right and the left wings are going to be the same, and you want them to be right next to it. So it's basically just to the left of the green. Click on that. Click on that. Click on the wing. Click on that. Okay, now the nose. Since the nose is closest to the camera, you can either do a double space on that if you wish, but we're not going to need to. I'm just going to do it to the right of the green. It's going to look just fine. Okay, now that you're done with painting your depth map, you might want to adjust it. Okay, you can put a Gaussian blur on this if you wish. You want to go down to Filter. After you right click, you go up to Blur, and as you see, it doesn't always attach to it, but this time it did. Sometimes it doesn't. Close this window out. You're done with that for right at the moment, and this is your blur. You can select, if you don't want to use a Gaussian blur, you can try any of these, but typically Gaussian blurs is used. You don't have to put a blur on it if you don't want, but this is how you adjust it. See how it's getting a little blurry there? You don't want it to be too blurry, just a little bit. I usually do a 15. I don't always do that, but sometimes I do. You can put the blur in there if you wish. You don't have to. Just remember that. You can experiment it with a little bit if you want. Now here's a little trick to get a little sense of roundness into your shapes. Instead of having like a flat cardboard cutout depth map, you can add a little bit of roundness to this by feathering the shapes. Now you don't want to do this to every shape like this. You don't want to feather that. Click on the object you wish to feather. Click on the shape. And when you click on the feather, what I'm going to do is zoom into this with a scroll wheel. When you put the mouse below, it scrolls in to the object. And you can go minus on the feathering. If you go plus to the feathering, it messes it up. Okay, you can't really see this. Don't know why. Don't understand why I did that. Probably, oh yeah, you see, now you can see a little bit. I had it too much. See how it does that? What it's doing is that the center is the hot spot where it's closest to the camera, and it gets rolled off to the next layer. And if you want to adjust it a little bit more, you can do the feather fall off. This changes how close it falls off. Just any which way you want. That looks okay. Wings you don't really need to. The helmet you can if you want. In order to get this back, click the middle mouse button, your scroll wheel, and have your mouse just a little bit below it and zoom in. If you don't like that, reset it and pull it up like that using the scroll wheel. Now you go back on this. See how it's changing it just a little bit? Go back as far as you want. That looks pretty good right there. Now select the feather fall off and adjust it just a little bit. Do slow adjustments. See how it looks just a little bit better? Pull it back just some, not a whole lot. A little bit more maybe. That doesn't look too bad at all. Okay, now reset that. Zoom into your face. Click on the face spline. Pull the feather back. See how it kind of rolls off? It's darker here because it's closer to the background, and this is white because it's closest to the camera, but it's darker than this. Just a smidge. That looks okay. You can do the right shoulder too if you wish. Take it back. Pull this to about yay. That looks okay. Not really being picky. You can do the body as well. Body might be a bit more, well, not just the body, but a lot of shapes can be complicated. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, that's basically all you want to do right there. You just want to turn some of these objects into rounder objects. See, that looks just a little bit better. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. You can play with this all day long. Okay, now you're thinking, well, how in the world do I export this? Well, first of all, you want to test this. Okay, you want to go to Image, go to Right. Okay, you don't want this right here, so pull this out, put this back onto there, take this off, pull this down to here, hook up the blur to your right node. Yes, this disappeared, and the reason for that is because it's not hooked up to the viewer. If you're really worried about that, this is how you fix that. Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Oh, well, that's part of the problem. Why in the world is it doing that? There it goes. That might be why it wasn't working right. Yeah, that's why. If you see that mask there, rehook it back up because it's not supposed to be there. This program is a little glitchy too. Also on your frames per second right here, do not worry about that because 23.976 is 24 frames per second. That's default for film. Okay, you want to come up here and change this to RGBA. Now you want to go to File. We're going to create a test depth map. Go to wherever your working folder is, and mine happens to be on the desktop. Click on the new folder. Okay, now you want to name this with full extension too. That's here. Okay, this can only save out to JPEGs. Okay, once you put in .jpeg, click Save, and now the file type shows up. Down on the options for JPEG, set the quality to max, and on your render order, you click on Render and click 1. Okay, making sure all this stuff is connected. The viewer doesn't matter, but I just wanted to show that for display purposes. Now you click OK, and it rendered out that fast. Okay, now we want to drop this. I want to drop Mocha. I want to load up Photoshop. And this is my working folder. Now this is what you want to do. You want to pull this into here. Hit Control A to select it. Hit Control Shift S to save this. And save this to a bitmap. You cannot use JPEGs for depth maps. They don't work. Go ahead and save this. It should be done saving already. Sometimes it's a little sluggish. Okay, now what you want to do is go over to the make sure you check the JPEG, get rid of it. Don't need it. Take the bitmap, drag it in. Do the same thing, Control A, Control Alt or Control Shift S. Now you want to save it as a Photoshop PSD file. Click Save. Close this. Okay, now you want to take, well, I didn't pull that up, did I? Shoot. You want to get the frame, the first frame of the movie, and pull that up. I could have swore that I pulled that up. I guess I didn't. Well, let's go into Documents, and let's go to the desktop. And let's get to that folder. And there it is, new folder. Well, I guess well, not new folder. What the heck am I thinking? Wouldn't be, there it is, that's the scene. Okay, now this is the first frame. Pull this over. Okay, now you want to come over to there, duplicate that layer. Name this right. See how it puts that on top, background on the bottom? Well, yeah, double click on that. It usually puts a little opening right there, but go ahead and change this to left. Okay, now you want to come up to here and go to Filter, Distort, Displace. Change the vertical scale to 0 and put this at, say, a -5. Always negative on the left eye. Now you want to go to that folder, which is new folder. There's your PSD file. This is the file that is used to displace the left eye. Now you do the exact same thing to the right eye. Go to Displace. Change that -5 to a 5. 5 indicates plus. Select the exact same PSD file because that's basically your depth map. Now that it's done, you want to make sure that it's highlighted. You can hit Control A if you want to. You want to go ahead and copy this. Okay, make sure that this is highlighted and on. Copy that. Come up to File, go to New, click OK. Now paste this. Okay, now you want to come back to the left. Check the left, make sure it's highlighted, make sure it's on. Copy that. Come back over to here. Now come over to your Channels button. Or not your button, but your selection. Click on the red, click on Paste. If you have a pair of Van glasses, you can look at this. And now you have your depth map. Okay, you want to check to make sure that everything looks okay. Nothing's out of place. It all gets pulled towards the screen like it's supposed to. It looks pretty good, really. Yes, the background is not going to pop out a whole super lot. It's very difficult to do black depth mapping. It's easier to do the white. It's easier to see it. But as you can tell, the nose is pulled up. It's round. The body's pretty much round. Yes, it's a little off, like over here, right here, it looks a little bit funny, but that's okay, because this was just a test. You can play around with the displacement when you test it all you want, but in the end, the depth map video is what you're concerned with, and other programs do different things. But that's basically how you create your depth map and test it. And now we move on to the next task. Now we want to load up Nuke again. This time we're going to output the depth map video. Okay, in order to do this, make sure that you got your roto paint node highlighted. A lot of people on the Nuke forums have asked about this, and it took me forever to figure it out. This is how you output to create a video. Since this 64-bit version does not support video output, it does not support multiple file output either. You click on render, click on flip book selected. Now you need to know how many frames this is. If you can't remember, pull up Mocha Pro, and you got your frame right here. That's the number of frames. There's 53. Type in 1 through 3. Do not hit enter. Click OK. When you do this, it will render all the frames. Now a new program loads up, Frame Cycler Pro. Now don't worry about this. This is in a zoom mode. All you need to worry about until you get familiar with this program is click on render. Okay, now you can output this thing to a frame sequence and choose bitmap if you want, but we're looking for a Depthmap video. There's several different ones that you can choose from. I have not tested any of these. I have been unable to load any of these up into certain programs for video reproduction. The Apple is the only one that I was able to do. And you want to type in your frame rate, and then you want to come down here to the untitled and name it. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it untitled for demonstration purposes, and then you want to pick the folder that your working folder for output. And it's been so stinking long. There we go. That's the new folder on the desktop, and then all you have to do is click render. And there you have it. You're done. There is your Depthmap video. Whoops, wrong one. Here it is, right here. Do not try and play this because it's QuickTime. Unless you have the QuickTime plug-in, it won't work. You can load this up into pretty much any video editor. I have successfully loaded this into AVS Video Converter and changed it to a different video format for playback. But that's pretty much all you have to do. The program that I use on the Depthmap videos is 3D Combined, and it works pretty good, but it is not perfect. Well, this concludes my tutorial on how to create a Depthmap video using Mocha Pro, Nuke, Photoshop to test it. And you can use 3D Combine if you want. If you have another program, or if you would like to try and figure out how to create a displacement in Nuke, by all means, knock yourselves out. If you know how to do it, please let me know, because I've never been able to figure it out. I've looked at a lot of different tutorials, and nothing has helped. I personally would rather use Nuke to create my my Depthmap video and do the displacement to generate your stereoscopic conversion for the scenes in Nuke, but I just can't figure it out. Well, that's pretty much it, folks. Got any questions? I can try and help out the best of my knowledge. By the way, this took me a month to figure out by myself. Well, almost by myself. I've looked at several different videos. I've watched as many of the free Steve Wright videos that YouTube users have posted on there, and thanks to him, that helped out quite a bit. But this is a tedious task. If you're wanting to properly do a conversion for a movie or a video clip or whatever, this is the correct way to do it. This is just one way that you can do it. There's other different ways you can do it. Creating a depth Z map is another way. That's quite a bit more complicated. I've also noticed that they are starting to use pardon me, AutoCAD to do conversions. That is the program that they use for Titanic, which, not to mention Maya. Maya is another program that they used. I think Maya is created by the Foundry, the same company that makes Nuke. And I'm not sure if Maya is included with Nuke or not. I don't recall. I've never used Maya before. I don't know. I think it was Furnace that's included with Nuke, not Maya. But that's the reason why the conversion on Titanic looked like it was shot in 3D, because they literally went back and redid some stuff